We now return to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. What is this place? Look at all these terrifying scenes. But why are all the people so still? Guillotines, ruthless murderers. I know what I'll be dreaming about tonight. They're all wax models. They're amazingly realistic, aren't they? That one looks real, though. What do you think, Ryuno? Shocked? Wax models? I read about dead bodies in wax once, in a magazine about strange phenomena. Depending on how corpses are kept after death, parts of them can turn to wax, apparently. It's called, adipocere? Stop talking about creepy things like that, Bruno. You're scaring me. Anyway, adipocere doesn't form readily, you know? It's only if specific... what now? I've just remembered something else I read in another magazine about strange phenomena. There was an old lady, maybe a witch, who used to pour molten wax over corpses and put them on display. None of the exhibits in here are real. They're all entirely man-made replicas. They can't be. Do you really expect me to believe that? Just look at them. Oh. There's no way anybody could make models of people that are this realistic. And they're all such gruesome scenes. Wait. What is it? Oh, no. I must be seeing things. A murder! Is this an arm? It looks like an arm, doesn't it? Maybe one of the waxworks models has fallen over. You don't think it could be the work of one of the mass murderers in here, do you? Bruno, stop scaring me. Is it a wax arm or a real one? Come on, you're always pointing that finger of yours in court. Poke that arm now and see how it feels. Objection! So I guess we're not going... Okay. We're not going to. That big, heavy curtain is in a very prominent position, isn't it? I have a nasty feeling there's going to be something truly terrifying behind it. Oh yes, that's the famous Dispel's special exhibit. It depicts one of England's most notorious killers. Do you want to pay the extra fee and have a look? Pay more money? To be even more terrified? Oh, let me think about that for a moment. It was only a suggestion. Right. That guard looks real too. These models are so well made, I can't tell what's a waxwork and what's a real human. Or maybe all the exhibits are real people, and when it's closing time and all the visitors have gone home, they suddenly start moving about. Just thinking about it makes me wish it was closing time already and I was on my way home. Okay, but can we look over there? Okay, I guess we're looking at this. Oh, that's a funny place for a little ladder. Little ladder? Little ladder? Little bottle of water? What is it? Is something wrong? No, it's just that in Japanese, we have a totally different word for a ladder that folds in half like that. We do in English too, you know. It's a step ladder, or just steps. So be careful of making assumptions about other cultures, Bruno. That's how wars are started over ladders. Didn't realize step ladders were an international point of contention. The writer makes an astute point. Sure. I don't know what the Japanese word for stepladder is, so I don't know what the joke is. Is this an example of Western Tsujigiri? I have no idea what you're talking about. You know, when an unscrupulous samurai randomly attacks a passerby to test his sword. I still don't know, no. But actually, a waxwork samurai would probably be hugely popular. Could you model it, do you think, Runo? doing that tsujigiri, that thing you mentioned? Well, I do have a sword, but I've no intention of testing how sharp it is on a human subject. For now, at least. Murder. It's the great detective, Mr. Herlock Sholmes. Mr. Sholmes has his own wax statue in here? Really? Well, he is world famous, after all. It's an uncanny resemblance, isn't it? It makes my skin crawl to look at it. I know. But look, Bruno, you can kick this Hurley and he doesn't move a muscle. Can't go around kicking the exhibits, Iris. Wait. It just moved, I'm sure. And not just a little bit, either. Really? Did it? And look closely. There are beads of sweat on the face of this waxwork model. Shall we move on, Iris? Over there, look. There's a great murder scene to enjoy. Much more appealing. My dear fellow, I take exception to your recoiling in such a manner as if you had seen something truly abhorrent. Mr. Sholmes, what a surprise! Iris, what possessed you? I strictly forbade you from divulging my temporary waxwork secret to Mr. Naruhodo. Temporary waxwork? What do you mean? And that kick, could you not have exercised a little more restraint? You winded me. But Bruno has something he needs to ask you. Ah, question. And I thought you'd probably be getting bored too. So here we are. Well, I can't deny that your timing is impeccable. A mere 2 minutes more being stationary like that. My great brain, upon which all my success has been built, would have turned to wax. Thank goodness we arrived in time. Indeed, in many ways the pair of you just saved the world from an unimaginable loss. Oh, Hurley, you do talk a lot of... you do like to talk nonsense, don't you? He could know something, it's true, about Lord Van Zeeks and what happened in the past to change him. Now that you're here, let's take our time. How can I be of assistance? Well, you're in luck. I'm suddenly quite taken with the idea of conversing. Oh, well, actually, I'm in quite a hurry, and if my eyes don't deceive me, I believe something is afoot within the walls of this very museum. A most fascinating case, if I'm not mistaken. Really. Moreover, I have a strong suspicion it is related to the matter about which you've come to me now. But how could it be? We shall speak again presently, my dear fellow, but for now I must return to my work. What, back to being a temporary waxwork exhibit? What is this place? Madame Dispels came to London from France 3 years ago, I understand. Since she opened this little waxwork museum last year, it's enjoyed great popularity in London. There are museums like this in Japan too, but these displays are something else. I mean, they aren't made from actual real people, are they? The extreme realism of these waxwork models is a particular secret of the Dispels family, they say. They earned renown during the French Revolution for waxworks of victims of the guillotine. It sounds grim. The gruesome scenes were portrayed with such realism in the expressions of the faces of the condemned. Apparently, the sculptors would make the models directly from the corpses, right there at the site of the executions. That really turns my stomach. That's just one of several legends about the Dispels family. Whether there's any truth in it, I couldn't say. But anyway, this museum houses models of famous people from all over the globe. Nevertheless, the most popular area of the museum by quite some margin is this House of Horrors. A House of Horrors. Of course, visitor numbers are dwindling now as a result of the Great Exhibition, but people usually flock here to see the exhibits of some of London's most vile criminals at their gruesome work. Naturally, most of the miscreants portrayed here sent to the gallows. So they're even stiffer now than the models of them. Have you heard of poor taste? My dear fellow, the public live for poor taste. They yearn to be shocked. So the hideous exhibits in here are... they're all portrayals of real events that actually took place. Is it just me, or did the temperature in here just seem to drop? Anyway, I advise you not to think too deeply about what you see here. Oh, he's back to being a waxwork, is he? Now, what do you mean by a temporary waxwork, Mr. Sholmes? Exactly what you see. I'm part of the exhibits here, catching these criminals in the act. Catching them. Every half an hour, I home in on a different killer in one of the displays and adopt a new pose to ensnare him. When members of the public come for a closer look, I offer them my hand to shake. For a shilling, I'll happily allow them to take a photograph with us. Us? Does he mean him and the waxwork murderers in here? But why, Mr. Sholmes? My dear fellow, isn't it obvious? For the money! He really roared at me there. Very fitting for the House of Horrors. As it stands, I may struggle to pay this month's rent, and I have the ravenous iris to consider. Oh, Herbie, I'm so hungry. If push comes to shove, I shall have to ask you to do your bit, Mr. Naruhodo. What's he threatening to rope me into now? So, with that in mind, how about a photograph? As a special treat, you may have your pick of the murderers and scoundrels in here. The choice is yours. Maybe some other time. Well, remember, Mr. Naruhodo, ignore me at your peril. Back to being waxwork again. Is it just me, or did his final remark there sound a lot like a curse? Well, what is it you'd like to ask me then? Actually, it's about Lord Van Zieks. Ah, friend Mr. Reaper. How did you find him? Well, I trust? I suppose. And so I filled Mr. Sholmes in about everything I'd learned. About Lord Van Zieks, about Professor Harebrain, and about the strange coincidence that they had been at university together. So I'm wondering what it was that happened to make Lord Van Zieks such a different person. I'm sure that you'd know, Hurley. You said there was something going on here in this exhibit hall before, that something was afoot, and that you believed it was related to what I wanted to ask you about. Mr. Sholmes? He suddenly clammed up. Well, it seems we've reached the unavoidable... Who? Who? Oh, hello. Where did she appear from? And what's she wearing? Could she look any more mysterious? I hope you are appreciating my museum. Sorry, have we? Mr. Sholmes, do you know this? Not again. My apologies. I am Esmeralda Two Spells. This is my museum of waxwork. What, you're the Madame Two Spells? Bien sûr, sure, whatever. Oh, she's French! God damn it, she's French! Only 26 years young, I might add. Is that significant somehow? I am a madame in name only. It adds a certain je ne sais quoi. Right. Firstly, I must apologize for my waxworks, or rather, one waxwork in particular. That'll be Mr. Sholmes, then. I was led to believe he was a great detective, but he seems unable to settle. The next time you move from your designated exhibit, there will be toil and trouble. She sounds deadly serious. It's a problem. How am I supposed to ask Mr. Sholmes about Lord Van Zieks now? Let's not forget what Hurley said before, about something being afoot. Right here in the museum, I mean. Yes, I know, but... I'm so curious, I want to know what's happening here. Haven't we got enough on our plate already? We haven't even made it to the trial part yet. Sure, let us converse. The waxworks. Did you make all these waxworks, Madame Dispels? I did. I'm the third generation of waxwork artisans, you know. Gosh. It was my grandmother who began the tradition in my family. Their fortunes were checkered, living through the turbulent times of the French Revolution as she did. Though that is when she acquired the savoir-faire that leads to the astonishing life-likeness. All these waxworks really do look as though they're alive. Or dead. In fact, they look more alive than Hurley. What you see exhibited here represents the most atrocious of London's criminal past. All the waxworks were created in the presence of the real people on which they were modelled, in the hours immediately following their executions. That is the secret of the extraordinary lifelikeliness. That sounds terrifying. All walks of life have similar challenges, I'm sure. To carry out one's trade par excellence, one must go to extraordinary lengths. My exhibits are a reflection of society. I create only that which the public wishes to see. Why couldn't the public have wished for something less horrifying? Do not fear. Sorry, this room is the only one in the museum with such a macabre theme. I do hope you'll explore. There are models of famous singers, actors, politicians. Something for every taste, I hope. Sure. It was Iris who dragged me straight in here, come to think of it. Sorry, perhaps I should have eased you into things. What's the situation with that? My temporary waxworks model. He approached me some days ago, you see, with a business proposal. Oh, what sort of proposal? My dear madam, the sparse exhibits need is the addition of a world-famous great detective. Or words to that effect. Naturally, I am well aware that Mr. Sholmes is widely known in London as a talented detective. That's great detective, actually. He's very specific about it. Yes, the creme de la creme. So I was keen to come to some arrangement with him, of course. But sadly, we were unable to agree terms. So he stands there for free now? Let me guess, someone wanted to charge an exorbitant price for his services. For a mere £500, I will dive into your cauldron of wax this very moment. Or words to that effect. Mr. Sholmes might have overdone it slightly with the sales pitch. Regrettably, the museum has a shortage of funds at the moment, due to unforeseen circumstances. Covering up murders. So we came to the current arrangement instead. Surely he doesn't really need to do what he's doing, though, does he? I would think not, but he was very insistent. I have a 50-shilling problem that must be resolved by the morning. Oh, words to that effect. Okay, great. It's the pawnbroker, that's what it is. He must have something to redeem. Is the consulting detective work not going so well? I wonder, could I ask you something? Sure. I'm just curious. Is anything going on in the museum at the moment? Some kind of incident, perhaps? You'll notice the body behind the curtain. Whoever suggested such a thing to you? Well, it was your temporary waxwork over there who mentioned it to me a little. Oh, he disappeared. A wax model is a work of art, not some tawdry object for trade. Who now? Of course. There you are. Evening's the exhibit again when you should be working. Do you wish to be melted down? My dear Madam Dispels, save your reprimands. There are more pressing concerns. Wax can wait. It's our ideas about your current problem we must throw into the melting pot instead. Personally, I would advise you not to involve the police. Why ever not? She's turned as white as a sheet. I guess? I feel like that was her color beforehand, because you have at your disposal a great detective, whose services you may employ for a mere 50 shillings. Though please be aware that I prefer... No, I insist upon payment in advance. Very well. Let us see if the great detective is able to live up to his name, shall we? Before I engage my analytical processes, I must ask you to clarify something. What, pray, is behind the curtain? That is the Dispel special exhibit. There is an extra charge to see it. Ah, the special exhibit in the House of Horrors. It must depict a special killer, then, I presume. Or a real body. Would you be so kind as to draw back the curtain, I wonder? Absolumon. Yes, absolumon. There's nothing amiss behind there. Nothing amiss, madam. What about the arm protruding ominously from under the curtain? I strongly encourage you to allow me to see what lies beyond before the situation worsens. Yes, very well. I will draw back the curtains, but only a supercon! Or 139. I must confess, I peeked behind the curtain earlier. The Dispel special exhibit is a very bleak graveyard scene indeed. And yet, somewhat surprisingly, the waxwork killer one would expect is nowhere to be seen. What does strike one, however, is the portly gentleman lying peacefully on his back on the floor. Well then perhaps Mr. Sholmes, that man on the floor, is the ruthless killer himself. I'm afraid not, my dear fellow. He's perfectly ordinary. He's a perfectly ordinary London gentleman, not even a waxwork, in fact. A what? As skillfully made as these waxworks are, they are always distinguishable from real humans. So allow me to present my two conclusions. First, is that a sizable business transaction has been taking place in this special exhibit. Huh? Why would you say that? And the second is that the aforementioned transaction is linked to a serious crime. She looks as pale as candle wax. I don't understand. So, Madame Dispels, as you've agreed to my fee, you shall now have the pleasure of seeing this famously great detective and temporary exhibit at work. A great deduction. To begin with, we must ask ourselves what exactly is afoot here in this museum. The answer is revealed by the bundle of banknotes protruding so helpfully from your bag. In my estimation, some £200. That is all my own money. So what does this large sum of money reveal? Ah, not as much as the involuntary glance you cast, it would seem, Madame Dispels. Yes, the answer lies where your eyes now fall. The significance of the £200 is revealed by that public notice. Waxwork for sale. Waxwork for sale. Your business has hit hard times, it would seem. In short, you you sold the infamous killer, the centerpiece of your special exhibit, for the sum of £200. None. Now, let us explore the next curiosity with which we are presented. Who is the portly gentleman stretched out so peacefully on the floor? It would appear the man has suffered a severe shock, the cause of which is clearly known to you. Unfortunately, madam, keeping secrets does not appear to be your forte. What dealt the man such a shocking blow was, of course, the £200. It would appear that you twisted this gentleman round your little finger most effectively. What are you suggesting? He rashly agreed to purchase the waxwork for the sum of £200. Only when he came to hand the money over did it occur to him that what an extortionate amount he was paying. But the money was no longer in his hands. The result? The scene we see before us. He collapsed in shock. Yes, the killer in this special exhibit fetched a killer price. We can only pray the gentleman's dreams are not plagued with regret. Sure. The question that arises then is what has become of the waxwork that changed hands? Let us consider that problem for a moment. You cannot possibly... What immediately strikes me about this conundrum is the young man standing over there. Who is this fellow? To find the answer, we need only observe his neckerchief, such as is worn by policemen, as a secret sign to fellow members of the force that a crime is being perpetrated. Yes, this young man is an undercover policeman, currently investigating this museum. I know him well, in fact. It's Sergeant John Clay. What are you talking about? The man's quite a celebrity. He received triple accolades at last year's policing awards. But... Next, we turn our attention to the old man sat before him with the particularly unsightly visage. I've been watching closely, and he hasn't moved a muscle, almost, in fact, as if he were a waxwork. And he's got a red kerchief. But your reaction only confirms my suspicions, madam. I noticed it at once, of course. Observe. The telltale sign that instantly proves whether or not this old man is a waxwork is the obvious price tag. Threepence, a tragically low price, you might say. Though perhaps the going rate for aging waxworks riddled with cracks. And yet you sold it to the portly gentleman for an exorbitant £200. A sort of plucky behaviour that's sure to attract the attention of Scotland Yard. Isn't that so, madam? I do not... Yes, the waxwork you sold has already been seized by the police and remains in their custody as we speak. The old man must be reunited with his grave in the special exhibit, not a moment too soon. What the hell is going on here? Thus concludes Sherlock Holmes' great deduction of this horrifying puzzle. No. Click back on the... There we go. I say I've stunned you all into silence. You have, Hurley, you have. And you've obviously upset this young lady in the process. Her cauldron looks awfully hot. If I could just bring up one point, Mr. Sholmes. Ah, the notorious Naruhodo 1 point. I'm all ears, my dear fellow. According to your deduction, then, the special exhibit featuring the old policeman. So that would mean that is the old policeman. So that would mean that he's the particularly ruthless murderer, wouldn't it? The killer policeman, Ottoman. Sorry? It was a mysterious series of murders that rattled the capital only last year. The police rushed to the scene every time, only to find the culprit had disappeared into the ether. It turned out the culprit was a policeman himself, a senior officer by the name of Ottoman. So you mean that's who the sinister-looking old man there is supposed to be? Indeed. It is a particularly grim fate, is it not? Unforgettable, in fact. Yes, I remember that odious countenance only too well. But is £200 a lot of money for a wax model? It would be enough to afford one of the latest steam carriages, if that puts things in perspective. So it's quite a lot, then. Is there anything else you wish to add before I melt you down? That bubbling wax is looking more and more ominous. I'm surprised it's still bubbling and boiling and hasn't hardened yet. The smell of that melted wax is starting to worry me. Mr. Sholmes did more or less just accuse her to her face, so I think I might have to call on your assistance here, Iris, if that's all right. Make some minor corrections to the great detective's great deductions. Of course it's all right. We'll soon set things straight. Well, let's get started then, shall we? Before Madame Tuspels vents her anger. Just what I was waiting to hear, my dear fellow. So, Madame Tuspels, in accordance with our agreement, we shall now have the pleasure of seeing this famously great detective and temporary exhibit at work. Course correction. Begin with, ask yourself what exactly is afoot here in the museum. Bundle of banknotes. No. That's probably the first one. She definitely looked in this direction, it's true. But I'm not sure she'd sell any of her waxworks, even for £200. Oh? She must pour her heart and soul into making them, don't you think? Over and above the wax. If it were me, I wouldn't sell them for anything. For that much money, I would, but it sounds like that makes me a bad person. Well, anyway, I wonder if the £200 could have some other significance. Let's follow that furtive glance again and see if there's anything else that could explain it. I mean that. What's that note doing pinned on the wall there? Oh yes, let's see. Dear Madame Tuspels, we've taken the prisoner from this room. The price for his safe return is £200. Have the money ready by noon on the 23rd of October. What? It's just like some sort of thing that's left behind when someone is kidnapped. Yes, a ransom note. Exactly. I mean, could we just present that one? Because that's probably what that is. The significance of the £200 is revealed by that ransom note. Quite so, and we must congratulate these criminals on their inventiveness, abducting a waxwork. £200 is no small ransom fee, yet you clearly intend to pay it. The model in question has special importance, so I put together all the money I have. In summary then, £200 you have in your handbag is ransom money. Now, let us explore the next curiosity with which we are presented. Who is the portly gentleman stretched out peacefully on the floor? Okay. Is that the next bit? So if the waxwork was kidnapped, where does that leave us in terms of who this man is? Could just ask him when he comes round. I think the point of this exercise is to understand the beauty of the deduction process, Iris. Yes, you're right. Hurley's trying so hard, we mustn't let him down. Well, there's little doubt that he suffered a shock. That seems clear. But in that case, what's Madame Tuspel's trying to hide? Let's have a closer look around. What the hell is that? That's her hand. This is just Madame Tuspel's right hand, isn't it? Yes, it must be. I can clearly see her left hand after all, but the hand doesn't bend that way for that to be her right hand. Oh, but wait a minute. This is the left hand as well, look. Don't say such creepy things, Iris, please. And it seems very stiff, too. In fact, it's really hard. You mean it's made of wax? I guess that's what we're after then, don't you think?
Take that!
What dealt the man such a shocking blow was, of course, the waxwork hand. Indeed, with a solid waxwork limb, one could deliver a very substantial blow. How could you... The hand protruding from the bottom of your cape. It ought to be a right hand, but closer inspection reveals that, in fact, it's a left hand. And somewhat masculine as well. In other words, it does not belong to you, madam. It is the hand of a waxwork model. Some of the visitors to my museum can be troublesome, so I just carry this with me to beat them. They meddle with the exhibits and cause damage. So you mean that arm? Yes, this gentleman saw fit to try to remove it as a souvenir. No small keepsake. Like taking a whole branch of a cherry tree when you go to view the blossoms. I'm afraid I had to teach the man a lesson. You confronted the man and tried to take the arm back. And the result? The scene we see before us. He was knocked unconscious. A point we may need to revisit later, but for the time being, we have our conclusion. Yes, the killer in this special exhibit has been kidnapped. Yes. Go on. The question arises then, what has become of the waxwork that changed hands? Well, wait a minute. The young man over here. It's his arm. According to Mr. Sholmes, the yellow neckerchief is a sign to other policemen that some crime is underway. A way of communicating with his colleagues without revealing his identity, yes. It's a secret that's closely guarded by Scotland Yard. That Mr. Sholmes didn't hesitate to give away. Well, uncovering secrets is in any true detective's nature, of course. Right. Anyway, judging from Madame Tuspel's reaction to Mr. Sholmes's deduction, I think perhaps we might not have identified the man quite correctly. I mean... What the? The man has a stub sticking out of his shoulder where his arm should be. Ah, well, that settles that then. Right, this isn't a real person at all. His entire arm's been ripped off from the shoulder down. His arm's been... Of course, that ties in with what we just found out. Right, so... there we go. Sure. Who is this fellow? To find the answer, we need only observe his shoulder stub. No such boneless human walks this earth, that I can assure you. In other words, the man standing here, the young Sergeant John Clay, is in fact defying all odds, a waxwork model. I seem to remember it was you who concluded he was a real person in the first place, Mr. Sholmes. He has become quite a celebrity in London, being the winner of no less than 3 policing awards this year. I simply had to make a model of the man. Naturally. What other explanation could there be? And it was this detective's arm that was pulled off by the man on the floor in the special exhibit, wasn't it? Next, we turned our attention to the old man, sat before him with the particularly unsightly visage. Right, okay. Let's move forward a bit on that one. I would suggest it's a real guy, and the tag is on his scarf. A killer policeman called Ottoman, was it? Oh, was he well known? It was all over the papers last year, but I can't say I know what he looks like. It's a very low price, though. Threepence isn't much money. Only enough for a few measly hours of gas in Mr. Garridib's delightful lodgings, in fact. So this is the special killer taken from the special exhibit, is it? The waxwork that somebody stole from the museum and tried to ransom for £200. Is this crusty old killer policeman Ottermole? Really? Perhaps we should have a look around again and see if another idea crops up. I mean, yeah? 3 pence. It's a far cry from £200, isn't it? For threepence, you could buy it and put it on display in your room, Runo. I think I'd rather not go to sleep being watched by an old man if it's all the same to you. This price tag does stand out, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Yes, I mean, you couldn't even buy the helmet on his head for that much money, I don't think. I wonder what the price tag's really for, then. Probably the scarf. Look at this. The old man's tapping his foot like crazy. He seems to be fast asleep, though. He's not tapping his foot consciously, then? So you mean... It must be a twitch. Never mind that. The point is waxworks don't tap their feet. Or twitch. And look at his arms, too. We've seen a scarf like that somewhere else around here, haven't we? I don't believe it. It's the secret sign that other detectives know some criminal activity is underway. Yes, it's a slightly strange choice of outfit if he was trying to go unnoticed. Ah, he must be a detective disguised as a policeman. Or a detective disguised as a waxwork model of a policeman. He doesn't look like he's clever enough to think of something like that, though. Perhaps you should try to be a little more polite about him, Iris. Alright, well, I guess we will... What's the thing? Telltale sign instantly proves whether or not his waxwork is, I guess, the twitch.
Take that!
The telltale sign that instantly proves whether or not this old man is a waxwork is the obvious twitch. Even the most realistic waxworks do not exhibit a twitch. In other words, this splendid old man is in fact a genuine member of Scotland Yard. A slight shift in your choice of adjectives, then. And there you have it. Well, Madam Tispels? Well, what? It was me who contacted the police and demanded that someone come in the first place. He is clearly fatigued. He is sound asleep. But then, what's this tag about showing a price? What's this tag about, showing a price of 3 pence? No doubt the price tag of the muffler, which the old Bobby purchased recently at a local market. And I presume you've observed the scarf tied round his arm. Does that not strike you, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes, the secret sign used by detectives to show that some criminal activity is currently underway. Of course, because, as you know, there has been just such criminal activity happening here. As you deduced from the very beginning, Detective. So, it would seem we finally arrive at the truth. The waxwork of the especially ruthless killer from the special exhibit has been kidnapped. And Scotland Yard are already investigating. But the model's whereabouts remain a mystery. Thus concludes Sherlock Holmes' great deduction of this horrifying puzzle. Still a mystery. Well done. What is going on here? All sorts of people visit my museum here. Men and women, young and old. Sometimes they drop in just for a short time on their way back from the pub. I welcome them all. But if anyone tries to damage my exhibits, do not take it lightly. Anyway, your great deduction was even more enchanting than I had been led to believe. Where's her other arm, by the way? It was a pleasure, my dear madam. I am gratified that you enjoyed the spectacle. And as for your rough customer, I've no doubt he'll regain consciousness shortly and return home. What concerns me more is the waxwork from the special display, if it was indeed genuinely abducted. Yes, tragically it was. Then I would ask you to recount to us the events surrounding the stolen waxwork, in as much detail as possible, if you please. Very well, but after I have told you what I know, I must insist that you return to your work. The talents of a great detective could be put to better use, I feel, but as you wish. Tell us more about the stolen waxwork, please. I feel like this whole interlude that we just went through was completely unnecessary to the story. It was some days ago now when I came in here one morning. I immediately noticed that the waxwork was missing from the special exhibit here. It is your most prominent display, so that's why the curtains were closed. And I found a ransom note in its place. The culprit must have broken in during the night and taken it then. So this waxwork that was stolen, it was a model of some horrible criminal, I suppose. Of a particularly horrible criminal, in fact. The killer who left a more profound scar on society than any other, I would say. The Professor. Not a name I've heard of. Professor Moriarty? Hey, Mr. Naruhodo, it seems the circle is complete. Sorry. The Professor case happened at around the time I was born, didn't it? Indeed it did, Iris. 10 years ago, a series of murders that rocked the capital. 10 years ago, yes. At exactly the time that Barak van Zieks graduated from university, in fact. What? Surely he is not saying. So the big event that changed Mr. Reaper's life. As you have surmised, it was the Professor case. Who was this Professor, then? It was a series of gruesome murders that had all of London gripped in terror a decade ago. After 5 victims were killed, the man was arrested and put to death. And now he's immortalized here in wax for all Londoners to admire and enjoy. Though, of course, he happens to be absent at present on account of the abduction. But I don't understand. How is all this related to Lord Van Zieks? You must first understand, my dear fellow, why it is that the Professor earned such infamy. It was due to the victims he chose, some of Whitehall's finest. What do you mean, Hurley? Those murdered by the Professor were some of the highest members of the British aristocracy, members of the nobility, even royalty. It sent shockwaves through the country's administration. Members of the... wait, of course. What Professor Harebrain said. Lord Van Zieks is from a family with noble blood. Oh, gosh. It was the 5th victim that led to the Professor's arrest. Last of the killer's prey was a young noble by the name of... Clint Van Zieks. No, I don't believe it. Van Zieks? I'm sure you can piece together the rest for yourself. In the wake of his older brother's murder, the young Barak pursued a career as a prosecutor, and eventually became the Reaper you know today. I had no idea Lord Van Zeeks had such a tragic past. Well, I'm afraid that's all I can say on the matter, for the time being at least. After all, I have work to do. As a waxwork exhibit. I'm afraid I shall have to excuse myself as well. Oh, yes, of course. It's been a pleasure, thank you. Well, none of the predicted scenarios I've been analyzing involved you coming to visit me here. Oh, I'm assuming this is Sherlock Holmes. No, it is not. It's been too long, it really has. I'm delighted to see you, Barak. It's been 10 years, and here we are, meeting in a prison of all places. I can't forgive myself for what happened to Mr. Asman, I just can't. I still can't believe it could happen. Tomorrow, the court will decide. Yes. I have a young Eastern man acting for my defense. He seems reliable enough, though. It was an accident, a terrible accident. He assures me he can prove it. I must warn you. Oh, I know. I've heard already. You're going to be prosecuting, aren't you? Yes. Since I returned to England, I've heard lots of stories. Barak, are you really... What? Never mind. I know that you have my best interests at heart. A friend is on trial. I wouldn't entrust it to anybody else. Of course, I fully understand. Thank you, Barak. Until tomorrow, then. I'll see you in court. Creeping through this 1 hour at a time. Okay. Anytime. Save! I'll see you next time.